Hi, welcome to my channel where we question everything. Today's topic is bits and pieces because there are a couple of small events that I would like to discuss. Now, I didn't want to do it. It seems to me everybody is jumping onto the bandwagon and discussing the recent missile event in Poland. There were apparently 2 people were killed, which is very unfortunate. But from my point of view, it is actually a non-event. Mistakes do happen. These things happen. If you remember correctly, I think it was either in Hungary or in Romania where there were some drones flying over it from Ukraine, and a big hoo-ha was made out of that, but not as much as this one is being done. But it seems to me also every punter and every journalist is just grabbing at the smallest piece of straw and trying to make a big issue out of it. And it doesn't seem to me as if the Polish government or the Ukrainian government is far behind. Well, from the photos, what everybody has said, it is an S-300 missile, or missile from an S-300 system. It's a very old missile. It has a range of about 75 kilometers. There was a Russian missile attack. But one must always remember that Ukraine is constantly under surveillance of radar systems, long-range radar systems, and satellite imagery, and whatever other warfare monitoring equipment you can think of exists. And everybody can trace back the flight path of this missile and ultimately decide where it came from. And it is precisely what the Americans have done and what the information has come out. And everybody finally concluded it was a Ukrainian missile that unfortunately missed, that was fired probably on a Russian cruise missile. And it missed its target. And it flew until the end of its range and then fell to the ground, and well, 2 people died. But that's how things work. I mean, borders are not unlimited. They have borders. That's why they're called borders. And if people make mistakes, and the soldiers always make mistakes, then that is what happened. What did people think would happen? Would it now, Poland will now blame the Russians and start World War III? So the death of 2 people will now translate into the death of millions of people and the destruction of everything? No. This is a non-event and shouldn't even really be discussed. I'll put it in the same framework as information or the rumor or the fake news, if you want to call it, that Russia was buying artillery shells from North Korea. These are outsider type of blips on the horizon. Nothing will happen out of this. Poland can now initiate Article 4 of the NATO alliance, and then what? They're going to discuss it. Turkey has done it how many times in the last, I think 5 times in the last 20 years, for various reasons, Syria mostly. And what came of it? Nothing. And I'm sure that the Western, the Americans, NATO, are not that stupid. Well, the Western part of NATO, not Poland and Latvia and other small idiots. It's like the tail wagging the dog. So basically, this is all hysteria, in my opinion. Well, then I would like to get to the second point and talk about Kherson and the Russian withdrawal out of Kherson. And I did read an article, and unfortunately I cannot find that reference anymore. But when I read it, it was basically stated that by one of the governing leaders, maybe the mayor or somebody that's, I don't know how the system works, but one very high in the echelon of managing Kherson City has said that after the Russians left Kherson City and evacuated about 114,000 civilians, there remained between 60 and 80,000 civilians still in Kherson City. Now, we all know basically what that means. And I had a discussion about my friend again, which I've mentioned now numerous times. And he unfortunately always had the statement that said, well, he doesn't care about what happens to these people because they made a decision to stay. They should have known what's going to happen to them. And if they are tortured and killed by the Ukrainian Nazi brigades and so on, then that is their fate and that is their decision, and based on the decision, and they should accept the consequences. Now, unfortunately, unfortunately, I cannot agree with that. So that's why we had some argumentative discussions, if you want to call it. And then also I saw a lot of other punters, pro-Russian punters and so on, that still doesn't want to accept reality. Please remember, I'm not saying that Russia will lose the war. I'm not saying it's not a good military. Well, no, I don't think. Yes, in part it is, but I can understand why the Russian troops withdrew out of Kherson. I can understand that, and you can argue about that, and you can support that, and it all makes sense. But everybody seems to forget what will happen afterwards. The Russian troops still have to reoccupy and fight for Kherson. And then Kherson will be destroyed, partially destroyed. To what extent, we don't know. But what we have been seeing is now that the Russians now put defensive lines on the eastern side of the Dnieper River. And the Ukrainians will probably also establish defensive lines on the western side. And I would believe that most of the forces will consist out of artillery pieces with a little bit of armor and a limited number of troops. Because crossing that river is going to be very difficult, and any crossing can be basically stopped by effective artillery fire. So effectively, Kherson region, Oblast will become, I wouldn't say demilitarized, there will still be troops, but most of the troops on both sides will be moved to other parts of the contact line, or the front, if you want to call it. And currently, most of the action is happening in the region of the near city, as well as sub-regional, and as well a little bit higher up to Lehman and Lehman, that area, and even higher up. So I don't think matter. I actually mentioned that for me, the only reason why I can think of why the Russians withdrew out of Kherson, which makes any sense to me, is that I made a recent video where there's a time lapse of the Russian or the military contact lines or the fronts or whatever you want to call it, the occupied areas that the Russians occupied. And you can see that the initial phases the Russian moved and conquered, or how do you even state that? One huge areas of controlled a lot of areas, and in the last 2 or 3 months, 2 months and so on, that area has been re-won by the Ukrainian forces with their counter-offensive or offensive, how you even call it, and the threat on the dam, reservoir, wall, whatever you want to call it. So things have changed, but again, in this video, I asked what was the original tactics or strategic objectives of the Russian army, and it seems to me it was a little bit confused. There was no proper direction. And now we have a single general in command, General Sorovikko. I don't say names correctly, please excuse me. I'm very bad with names. Anyway, so he saw the chaos, He saw the attack on Pavlovka was a typical example, and he probably decided, whoa, let's call it a halt for a moment. Let's consolidate our forces, our contact lines. Let's bring some order and purpose and direction and strategy into the play. Let's wait for the 300 reserves that are on their way. We will sacrifice Kherson for the moment, but we will reconquer it. Maybe not the expected crossing of the Dnieper River, but maybe going north via Zaporizhzhia around the huge lake, and then to Nikolaev, and then cut off the supply lines to Kherson. I can see that as a military strategy. But again, if one has to look at how the Russians are basically conducting the warfare, it's a war of attrition as per Russian doctrine. They are very focused on artillery, and they even state that infantry is in support of artillery, where the Western military structure is usually based on the infantry moves forward, and the artillery is in support of the infantry. So the movement is very slow on the Russian side, and that is unfortunately part of the strategy that they employ. It's a result of that. They bombard the enemy with massive artillery fire, and then they slowly sort of drive them back, kilometer by kilometer, depending on the terrain and what the terrain allows, and so on and so forth. I'm sure there might be some cases where we are going to have tank battles, or at least a tank advance. We can see that sometimes, some of the videos. But it's the process is going to be slow, and winter is coming, so I'm not totally sure how the winter will affect the whole matter. But then I got an article, and unfortunately I have to read it a little bit so that you can understand, or that I don't miss anything out. Because unfortunately, it's a translation from the Russian webpage. And it basically was done, sent by the acting governor of the region, a guy called Vladimir Zaldo. And he said, and I quote, "Of course, there were those who were waiting for the Ukrainian army, and there were quite a few of them," he noted, "along with the fact that people with flags were shown in the central squares of Kherson. This is 100% staged. A great picture which had been prepared in advance. Several buses were brought up from Mykolaiv, and these people were expressly great joy and jubilation, and this information is absolutely accurate. That means that the photos, what we see, and the videos that we see are all staged events, and basically they were all pro-Ukrainian civilians that were brought in from outside of Kherson." And then he goes forth. "In Kherson, thought they are afraid to go out. People know what the representatives of the Ukrainian army will do to them when they enter the city. After all, the Nazis know very well who lives there and who can be brought in for cooperation with the Russian authorities and who has friends in the Russian Federation. There are plenty of reasons to cling to and torture people. These massacres appear on social networks in spite of problems with electricity and communication. According to the acting head of the region, not everyone managed to move to the left bank of the Dnieper, which is very important. And here comes the crunch. Many did not believe to the last minute that the Russian army would retreat, and the AFU would enter the city. Now they are making risky attempts to cross the floodplains at the risk of their lives. The water surface is shot through from both sides." And then I quote again, "People didn't believe it could happen. People are not military. They don't know what it is happening on the fronts and why certain actions have to be taken. Yes, this is war, and during a war these things thought unaccustomed are there." That's Zaldo expressed. "Many people have inertness. It is hard to leave their place. It is hard to move. It is difficult for a person to move to another place, and in Kherson, on the right bank, there are many people who clearly are not supportive of the Ukrainian authorities. They now have to endure all the hardships. So this is the reality. When pro-Russian pundits talk about that, they always talk at the higher level, never talking about the people on the ground. You know, I recently watched a television series about unknown soldier, and basically it was, say, a couple of Finnish people that were involved in the Finnish war against Russia during World War II. And although the whole series is not that impressive, but what it showed you the unknown soldier. The soldier that we never hear about, that fights and dies in the trenches and gets killed when they attack and so on. Those are the people. That's a low level of warfare. And one should never ever forget these type of people. And that is what this representative was talking about. The people in Kherson, who are now supposed to be Russians, couldn't believe that the Russian forces will abandon them. That is bad. And that is what I always talked about, why I said Kherson was a bad decision. Not only a point from a visible point. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about propaganda. I'm talking about not protecting your citizens, not ensuring that they properly are safe. And from a military point of view, you have to reconquer that area, and that's going to be difficult and will cost lives in any case. So might as well have had different options. Like I said, maybe carpet bomb the Ukrainian forces and widen the space between, drive the Ukrainian forces back far enough so that this situation of your back fighting with your back against the river is not an issue anymore. And then in the same article it says, this information was confirmed by Kherson's blogger, a guy called Nikolai Tereshchenko, who went to Crimea on the eve of the retreat of the Russian army. And then his blogger said, my pro-Russian friends stayed in Kherson, confident that the city will not be surrendered. From Kherson there is disturbing news. Everyone is falling under the crush, in particular the bus and cab drivers I know, drivers in funeral homes. A separate song is snitching. That means snitching has become popular, not popular, but maybe an issue. Who received Russian pensions and humanitarian aid? This too was told to him, as well as the fact that there was social competition in the field of snitching. So these are prime targets for that. And he also pointed out the center of Kherson will be demined. That's what the Ukrainians said. Now, closing the entrance street, I will tell you with a great secret. The center has not been mined. I know this for a fact because I live there. So there are other events planned in the center. And I can even guess which ones. So basically, again, this is from the people, the Russian people now, citizens, who were left behind in Kherson. So how many civilians will die? So what is fair for any, you know, when we always talk about war and bombs and terrorist acts and whatever, human rights and so on, we always talk about save the children, save the women, save the old men. Well, we never talk about men, but that's something different. Not different, something I don't totally agree with, because men are also unarmed and can't defend themselves. They are civilians, and they have the same right of living like a woman or a child. But that's not the point here. He said everybody's always shouting, so save the kids and the women and the old men that can't defend themselves. That means the civilians. And what is a soldier supposed to do? A soldier knows that he has a chance of dying. That is what he is supposed to do. Not die, but fight. And if he's killed, too bad. But what again? Then I read an article written by a woman. She apparently is in the movie industry. And then she, I actually wanted to do, could have sort of quoted them. But in any case, she was talking about, she's not talking about movie itself, and war is not a movie, and the reality is totally different, and etc. and etc. All this other bullshit story. And then she talks about what Tolstoy has written in his novel War and Peace. And it's all about honor and responsibility and doing the right thing and so on. And soldiers die for their country and being patriotic and etc. and etc. and etc. And it's all this glorified junk, bullshit, and so on. So if you support these things in a war, like patriotism and defending the fatherland and fighting for your country, then what are you fighting for? The soil or the people? You fight for the people, the unprotected people, the women, the children, the old men, the civilians. And for what? For that, soldiers are supposed to be prepared to die. That is what they were supposed to be doing. And what Kherson has happened with the withdrawal? They saved the lives of the soldiers at the cost of the civilians, the ones that should have been protected. That is what I should have done. So don't come to me about bullshitting, glory, and glorifying the soldier and the military and patriotism and all whatever goes along with that, and then you are a flippant coward, and then you withdraw and allow civilians to be killed. Sorry, I'm ranting again. People, wake up a little bit. Stop dreaming and then come back to life and reality. There was actually another topic I wanted to talk about. Oh yeah, and Kherson was supposed to be a trap, according to Andrei Martinov. You know what I'm talking about. I respect the guy, like the guy, no problem. But again, he talks about bullshit that only he knows and everybody else knows nothing. Now I'm getting sick and tired of this junk. Sounds very much like my friend. Hey, don't get excited. And then he said that Kherson was a trap. What trap? So Kherson is now a trap for the Yukis, the Ukrainian forces. What? Because there's no electricity? What? Really can't be restored? No. No, the logistics are now scarce in Kherson. What the hell? Who cares? They were 40 kilometers away from Kherson, so why not move the logistics a little bit further? No big problem. What other traps is there? What? I tell you now, you are talking bullshit. Since you are always talking, other people are talking bullshit. Don't know what they are doing. You don't know us. You don't know what experience we have. You don't know how we see the world. But again, I made the video about the time lapse of the last 9 months, and even pro-Russian punters stick to the guns. Don't want to hear anything bad. Don't want to hear any alternative view. We're not talking about the crap that the Western, pro-Western news medias are making. I'm not even talking about that. People that make assessment, professional people. I can't name names. You know I'm bad with names. But maybe I should make a list of all the guys that really know what they are talking about. Professionals. You know? People that know what they are talking about. But no. Unfortunate video. I started over about 5 or 10 minutes talking about why I believe the Kherson was a bad military decision. And then people only watched it until that and didn't watch it further, where the maps were actually presented, where they could have seen for themselves. And it doesn't matter how you try to frame it. It doesn't matter you want to sugarcoat it. Go look at the maps on how the territory was won and lost and still think everything is hunky-dory. Everything is brilliant going for the Russians. Wait and see. Have some time. Have a cup of coffee. Or like the British say, hey, have a cup of tea. Again, I don't believe the Russians will lose. But not the way that they're doing now. It's going to cost them a hell of a lot of money and lives the way that they're going now. Oh yeah, that started talking about this whole story about peace talks. That's a non-event again. I think I made a video yesterday or so, or the day before, about Jake Sullivan, all the visits and so on. Again, everybody's grabbing on this little bit of tidbit information and making conclusions and forcing the issue about peace talks going on. Now today Zelensky basically said that yeah, he's prepared to talk to negotiate and so on, but in public for what the hell does it mean in any case? This is all bullshit. This is like grabbing really at straws just to find a narrative, to maybe make a video or write an article or whatever you want to see it, but it's non-events. The Russians, according to what I understand is their protocol, is when they fire the first bullet, they state they are prepared to negotiate. And that is their style. And even if the enemy is dying or defeated, they are prepared to negotiate. And even if the Russians are being defeated and killed and so on, they are prepared to negotiate. Because at the end of the day, wars are terminated or come to an end on two grounds only. Unconditional surrender, which seldom happens, that begins total annihilation, or a diplomatic agreement, negotiated settlement to a conflict in terms of politics, which is the most time this comes to an end. So why not even start negotiating from the start off? Russia has not achieved any of its objectives, stated objectives, the three objectives. Not one of them. And we always talk, at one time they talk about they have to conquer or the denazification and demilitarization of Ukraine, and then they say on the other hand, but they are fighting NATO. Which brings the fourth point, the unsaid point to the whole negotiation point at the end of the day. And that is the undivisible security concerns of Russia, and that NATO must retreat to the regional borderline when in 1994 or 2, whenever the Soviet Union came to an end. That's the unspoken condition. And even if the Russians don't achieve that, then they might as well give up now. Might as well prevent the loss of more lives, soldiers, and blood and flippant destructions. They might as well give it up. So in my opinion, they have no choice. Oh yeah, and the fifth actually unstated type of thing, again, it's the establishment of a multipolar world. So if Russia makes peace now without the acknowledgement that Russia retains the full Kherson Oblast, the full Zaporizhzhia Oblast, and the two Donbass things, and demilitarization of Ukraine, and denazification, and the withdrawal of NATO to the original alliance, and a multipolar world, then that's it. Why fight? That's it. That they should be achieving. Otherwise, then all the soldiers' lives was spent in vain. All the destructions, all the money spending, all the sanctions, all this bullshit going on. What the Russians could say is, if you make peace now, I won't occupy Nikolaev and Odessa. But if you don't negotiate now, I will take those two oblasts. But these other 5 points, that's sort of non-negotiable. I will hear what you say because they say no preconditions, but we all know there are preconditions. It's diplomatic talk. And again, everybody jumps on this bandwagon, making a big issue of a non-event, trying to say things that are really not there. People, come on. You got to do better analysis. You got to do a little bit of more homework. You got to think about what is happening and everything. Things are never as easy and simplified as most pro-Russian punters or pro-Western punters try to make it. Because we are not sitting on the front line. We are not sitting in the command structure. We are not sitting in the leaders' offices when discussions are held. We are not hearing the discussion being held. So we only can speculate. And the more data points you consider, the more accurately you can create a picture. But grabbing piece by piece on the most minute type of information, that is fatal. And you are actually bullshitting your viewers. So today I went on a little bit of a rant. And I'm not going to ask you whether you like it or not. If you want, you can subscribe, share the link, tell your friends. But those bullshit stories has to stop now. So until next time, cheers.